Do what you like to do and enjoy what you're doing, and then everything comes automatically by itself. And sometimes earlier, sometimes later. But don't chase financial goals or don't chase visions which are not your own. You have to have your own vision, and you have to enjoy and like what you're doing. And then you don't think about 32 hours, 35 hours a week or 40 hours a week working. It's not measuring time, it's measuring success, measuring performance. And if you like something, it's merging. There's also not this work-life balance. It's one thing, it's your life. And if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not perceived to be work. It's part of your life. And then it's almost 100% the case that you're going to be successful.
Hello and welcome to the Ronny Leber Show, where every week we bring you fascinating guests with inspiring stories of success and overcoming obstacles from the worlds of sports, business and entertainment. To support this channel, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell and hit the like button so that we can deliver you the best content possible. He grew up in Graz, Austria, and enjoyed his own successes in the world of sports as a member of the Austrian swimming national team and the national diving champion. He decided to stay in the sports world and started his own company with a bang. In 1991, together with his co-founder, they started a company and created an ATP tennis tournament on the rooftop of a shopping center. Starting with the regular event business, just a few years later, in 2003, they expanded international. Today, they are producing some of Europe's finest tennis tournaments, including the Erste Bank Open Vienna, the Boss Open in Stuttgart, and the Bet1 Open in Berlin. And he's also a member of the board of the ATP, joining us live from Graz, Austria. I'm delighted to have him on the show. Please welcome, here is Herwig Straka. Woo!
Thank you for the introduction, and welcome everybody from my side as well.
Thank you for having me here. And today we'll not only talk about your story and also where the world is going in terms of the sports world that we're in, and also how your story has actually shaped or been shaped by the world of sports. But also we will talk about some details that you can learn and take with you as well. But when you look at your life today and think back at your journey, was this what you had imagined as a kid?
No, not at all. I think this was a career with a lot of crossings where I probably took not always the direction I was supposed to take or I thought I would take as a kid. So no, not at all. Again, I of course, sport was played always an important role in my life. So this was somehow expected, but to be in a leading role in tennis globally in many dimensions, of course, was not expected. And I feel very privileged with that. Yeah.
Wow. And when you say that sports always played a big role, because you were a swimmer and also a diver in a way, and very successful in a national level. And did sports already play a big role in your family when you grew up, or how did you get into that?
Yeah, it was in fact it was a sporty family. A lot of activities were done, so not on a super professional level, but we always were in touch with activities, sport. And so that's why I somehow entered in tennis and swimming, and swimming became actually the bigger part in my first 20 years, very, very intensively, and then tennis took over more or less. So yeah, this passion and the fascination of sport always was there and still is there. So which is I think a very important base if you want to be successful in your career.
You're mentioning a very important part, because when you look back actually at your active career in sports, and you did this on a very high level, what learnings did you get back then that that you took with you in your professional career afterwards?
No, I think there's a lot of parallelity or synergy between top whatever in what dimension, but top sport and professional business. So first of all, it's the learning that you have to work hard and train hard to achieve something. So nothing is coming from itself, not even with a lot of talent. So this is something everybody learns, I think, through sports. And we still work hard to achieve something, even though people might not see that, but it's reality. So this is I think the most important learning from sports. And besides that, of course, it's the commitment, the dedication. If you like to do something, then you do it right. And if you do it right, the success will come automatically at some stage, sometimes sooner, sometimes later. So these are the key learnings actually from the career as an athlete, and I sharing that with other athletes as well, and they prove it actually. So this is I can only encourage everybody to start a career as a professional, a very intense sports man or athlete, and that definitely helps in your career later on.
And I can imagine also that, especially now, also having to deal with a lot of professional tennis players, for example, or professional athletes, that this also helps that you have this own background. And before actually we get into your professional endeavors, I read your CV, and there was, it said in 1990 you went on an internship to New York for a bank back then at the time. So I guess this was probably right at the end of your studies or something, somewhere around that, or maybe even after it. But and I also spent a year abroad in high school. What did you learn through this internship and through being abroad? What learnings did you take out of that?
No, I did study in Austrian university for business and law, and I always it was always a goal to get international, to get the wider world and the experience and expertise from people outside Austria. So this was always in my blood or in my motivation. And so this opportunity came up, and so I took it. And at those days, talking about what was my goal as a kid, or it was my father was a banker, and so it was more like this way of industry I was supposed to go. And so that's why this opportunity was taken by myself. And it was, I mean, living in New York for half a year and working there, not as a tourist, but as one of the locals. And I think it was a big privilege. And I still have a very close connection to that city, go there many times. And so not only as a city, but also the mentality, the people. So this of course widened my horizon immensely, and this for sure was also an important part in the career I've taken finally.
Oh, that's very interesting because you also already mentioned that before. Also, you studied, and then you went there to work in a bank in New York, and then you come back. Your father is a banker, and then the son is going to take the career on and follow in the footsteps, and suddenly you have the idea of, well, let's make a tennis tournament on the rooftop of of a shopping center. Or how was that?
It was like more in the beginning. They have seen it as a hobby, a crazy hobby, running events, and of course, my parents also like tennis, and so was some sympathy for that, but never ever as a main job. So it was more like again parallel development. But all of a sudden, it took over pretty quickly, and uh, grew much faster than we thought. So the idea with the tennis on the roof of a shopping center was kind of unique, and that put us in an elevated position from the beginning. So after a few years, actually, my parents also realized, okay, this is something that might become serious, and I think today my father seems to be proud. Again, he's also working in the board of tennis clubs, and so he was close connected to tennis as well. So he's, of course, my feeling is proud what I have achieved, even though it was not the kind of profession in the beginning probably everybody thought about. But no, and then same with me. So as I said in the beginning, there were some crossings I took a different way than I supposed to, but I think it was the right way in the end of the day, and I think it would take the same direction again if I would come to the same crossing.
And in a way, also, I guess that you follow your passion, or you stayed close to the world of sports, and so take us with you. How did the idea get started with let's create a tennis tournament on a rooftop? Because there was, as you mentioned, something unique. It was not like you saw this somewhere else. It was really something. Hey, let's do this here. And also, what were the first, let's say, the obstacles, or what were the challenges in order to get this done?
No, in the beginning, of course, you have not the idea to become successful or run at some stage an ATP event. It's a step by step process, and the original idea was and it was beginning of the 90s. It was to create an event more than just an ordinary tennis tournament. So there have been quite a few successful tennis tournaments, but they all were run in a club or in a tennis environment, apart from the Vienna tournament, which I'm running now, which was always in the Wiener Stadthalle. So, but then we thought, okay, in order to, Graz is not Vienna, so we had to attract people, attract media, attract players. So we thought about some more creative ideas, and that's how the shopping center as a location became, yeah, pretty solid in our mind when we started. Also because of the easier contacts to the industry, to sponsors, to commercial entities, and to, so it was easy to find sponsors there, and the extreme approach in terms of a location, because usually you have the ATP, which is the organization hosting those events. They come to visit, they have a site check, and then they realize, okay, when they had a site check in the shopping center, there was nothing. So we had to you provide a lot of impressions, a lot of explanations, a lot of visions, and somebody from an organization, a global organization, comes to a small city and there's two 25-year-olds explaining the world, probably is not easy. So we got the trust from them as well, and that's how it started. And they trusted us, and thanks God we proved it. So it was. I think it's still the only ATP tournament on the roof of a shopping center up today, and this was exceptional. So it was much more expensive than every other tournament, but we also got much more sponsors and more interest, and that's how it all started.
Wow, and today it would be probably you or somebody in your position actually to go there and to have a look, right?
Yeah, yeah. Not not having the look, because it's the job of the management, but of course being involved. So on the board level, if somebody comes up with an application, these are the things we in the end of the day also have to agree and decide. And so yes, it's actually a change of roles.
So you basically ended up in the entrepreneurial world, but not in a normal entrepreneurial world, but in a sports business world, so to say. What would you say is the main difference between working in the normal economy and working in sports?
Yeah, I mean, it's of course your content. I mean, that's what you're doing is probably more lively, more exciting, more emotional than uh, working in a bank. Maybe not. So, but and this is very changing actually from day to day. So many things happen because it's a sport, because it's not an ordinary business, and that makes it absolutely interesting to work in that environment. So I'm learning still from day to day. Many things are changing. Like nowadays, I mean, we all see what's going on in sports. It's getting very commercial. A lot of interest there. So it's the level of professionalism is I mean, raised incredibly. So this has changed over the past 30 years. In the beginning, was sport was more still like more amateur sport driven, but today, so being part of that whole transition and being part of that whole daily changes makes it very interesting still.
Wow. So, and that's we're going to get more into that a little bit later. But looking back at your early days in the world, so you just had done your first event in on the rooftop, and then those first years, as the thing was growing, what were the, let's say, the early career struggles as a sports entrepreneur? And were there maybe some pivotal moments or something where you thought some make or break moments or something where it's like, I don't know if this is gonna be it, or did you always was it always just one way and that was up?
No, it's that's probably similar to any other business. Today it's called startup, but in the early days was just founding a company. And in the beginning, you need to combine the right ideas with the right people who trust in you, and this is definitely the biggest hurdle in the first time. And then if the proof of concept is there, it's always easier. So for us, of course, the first year was by far the biggest hurdle, to convince people that what we had in our mind, that what we had was our vision, that what we explained to everybody, we designed models, and I mean, it was very difficult to explain somebody running a tennis tournament, not in a tennis club. And at those days, actually, the term event was not really existing. So today, it's almost like everywhere, and then nobody using event anymore because it's used too many times. But in those days, it was new, and combine a sport event with entertainment, enhance it with other factors. I think that was new, and that was actually proven by our first and second edition. And then a few years later, the first top players actually got to know it. And I remember in 1994, it was Henri Leconte. He was a former top 10 player. I think he was still top 10 at these days. And we were able to sign him. So, and this was for us like a milestone, to have a top 10 player playing in Graz on the roof of a shopping center. And then actually that was the moment everybody, including media and then also national-wide media, and that's why we became more and more like a national event from a regional one, and so I think this was a very important step, and Rory delivered well, and it was fun. So, and we're still good friends. So this was actually definitely a milestone. And then of course the next one was 10 years later when we added the Champions Tour to our challenger. So it was the beginning of the 2000s where people like Boris Becker, of course, Thomas Muster, and Jim Courier, and Pat Rafter, and whoever, Pat Cash, a lot of Björn Borg, of course, a lot of top international names, former superstars. They all came to Graz, so to a small city, comparably small city. So this was definitely another milestone in terms of attraction, attendance, and interest, and what we created. So, and latest by then, I think we also became an international event.
Wow, that's fascinating. Do you remember what was driving you inside also in these early days, in order to, when there were hard times or when you didn't know how we're going to do it? But what was actually fuel that kept you going, that kept you moving forwards? And also, where did you take the courage from?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. First of all, we have been a good team, so it was two of us, and this is always important. I think I can only encourage everybody to not run your business by yourself. I think it's always good to have a team. So minimum of two people. The more, the better, probably, or maybe not too many, but a few people together with the same vision, sharing the same courage, as you said, and the same energy, same emotion. I think it was very important. So of course you have some moments where you're not successful in signing sponsors or getting up the money you need, and so there was a lot of enthusiasm from the beginning, and thanks God, in the end of the day, it worked, even if we didn't make money for many, many years. But we liked our job, and I think this is what I can always encourage anybody. I mean, if you love what you're doing, at some stage you will become successful, and at some stage, as a consequence, then of course you also become financially successful. But I think it's just doing something for money, or the nowadays exit strategy to something to exit in 5 years. I think this was not at all in our mind. So we just did it because we loved what we were doing, and that's why I think it became successful. But yes, there's a lot of hurdles and a lot of ifs and a lot of what if, and so we had two approaches. First of all, very optimistic and straightforward and committed that what we did, but also at the same time to have some kind of parachute. So what happens if we're not successful? And my partner was in tennis, and so he had an alternative. In the end of the day, I could do the job which I was supposed to do. So there was always a plan B as a backup, and we never went too risky. So yes, it's a very risky environment, a very risky profession, but in the end of the day, we never risked too much. So I think, and thanks God, we never needed a parachute. So we never needed to rent money or to borrow money, or to borrow money from banks, or so. It was always self-invested. So it was, I think it was a stable, slow, but very consistent growth. And after 30 years, I can say we're still growing. So it was never a step like in a huge step. It was always in small steps. But I think that's also important if you want to have a sustainable business and a long-term success.
Wow. And you mentioned also the importance of having the right people on your team. And even if you're just starting out with a partner, then it's a team of two. But after you are growing and growing, so you need to add more people actually into your team. What are the important character traits of somebody, or how do you choose talent? And what are the important character traits that you choose to work in the sports field or to work on your team?
I mean, first of all, it's probably easier in nowadays when you talk about employer branding and how to be an attractive commercial entity. It's definitely easier to get somebody into an event business or into sports business. So there are a lot of people were interested in earlier days. And so that's why it wasn't too difficult to get people, but of course it's very difficult to get the right people. And um, we the process was pretty similar all the time. So people started to part-time work in our office, in our project, and then we got to know them closer and better, and that's was a very smooth way actually to include them into our company, and many of them actually started as whatever linesmen or other people at the tournament, and then so we had a good proof for both of us. So the employee actually got to know more about our entrepreneurship, and the other way around. Number one, and number two, in terms of choosing the right people, I always followed the principle that the personality and the character of a person is the key priority. So because you can learn mostly anything, maybe some technique stuff or engineering is maybe special, but in our world you can learn probably most if you're smart and if you have some basic abilities, and this is the commitment and the dedication and the passion for something, and that's how we choose people, and up to now I did not change that strategy, and so we have a very good team, so obviously it works, and some abilities and some you can learn, yeah, if you can pick up, you can get experience, and so that's the team grows and grows, how the team grows and grows, and yeah, in the end of the day now as a group we have more than 50 people, so it's yeah, as I said before, it's a consistent growth.
Wow, that's really beautiful, and also it goes back to the principle of hiring for attitude and then teaching or training the skills afterwards. Or I mean, if somebody already brings them, great, but it's really about having the right attitude to fit into the team. You mentioned something before about taking risks and that you were not taking a lot of risks or not taking big risks. Now, looking back in the late 2000s, you actually you took over the tournament in Vienna as a tournament director. And well, for some, it might be considered a bit risky because at the time, just to look at Vienna, the Vienna tournament at the time, it was not a lot of audience drawing. There were not a lot of top stars there. And also, it was not like it was flowing with money all around. So basically, you came in and it was quite a project actually to turn it around. And I mean, just to take it away, it really turned around incredibly. But how was that when you first came to Vienna and you thought that's something I'm going to do, and what was the vision behind it that you actually, you might not call it a risk, but that you actually took on that endeavor?
Yeah, as you speak, actually, I thought about probably for somebody from the outside world, it's a huge risk, and that's what actually I heard many times. It's a very risky job and it's a very risky environment. So maybe it's like a Formula One driver. The Formula One driver probably, if he drives the car, not really perceiving it as a risk. So maybe he thinks it's also just doing my job, and it's for somebody like us, probably driving a Formula One car is a big risk. So maybe that's a similarity which explains it. So again, for us in the being in the business, knowing all the key parameters, I think it was not too risky. But maybe from an outside world, it seems to be pretty risky. But and yes, taking over in Vienna, it was making a huge loss, and was running by the venue itself, and so I was always and yeah, many years in close contact with Leo Heimer, who was the former tournament director, and much more with Peter Feigl, who was the tournament director. And at some stage, it became pretty obvious that it needed to change, and also in terms, Leo turned, I don't know, he retired, I think, even so. That was a good time, and I have to really give them credits that they gave me the full trust that I'm the right person to make the change. And I didn't even present some concept, but I just believed it needs some fresh up, some modernization. Now there's digitalization. So I think and yes, the vision, of course, was to bring it back to that level, which the tournament has been in the 80s, 90s, with the best players in the world. Full stadium, that a key event in Austria, one of the top sport events in Austria. So these were my goals, and looking back at 2023 edition, I think we almost overachieved. So I think it's probably definitely one of the most successful sports events in Austria. We probably bring the international best athletes and to Vienna, globally superstars, and I think and it was sold out every day. So I think we almost overachieved. So, but we already have plans for the next steps and the next 30 years and to grow again. So now there's a lot of potential still, and as I said in the beginning, sports and especially tennis is in a very good position at the moment in the entertainment world.
So tell us about actually how that happened, because from actually making a lot of debt, the tournament itself, then also not having a lot of audience in there. Now it's basically sold out every day. I remember those days when even at the final day it was not even half full, even though there was an Austrian tennis player actually winning the final, and so on. So it was a lot of things. It was not like sponsors were lining up to sign, and how did you approach it? How did you then go in, and what were the things that you needed to tackle?
Yeah, again, first of all, it's a long-term plan. I wouldn't even say plan because many things happen automatically. But we had the vision, we had the goal, which I mentioned before, and I think what's always important to remember and get yourself into your mind is that it's a people's business. So it's about how you talk to people, how you treat people, how you uh, welcome them, how you appreciate them, and that in many dimensions. So of course with sponsors, with media, and very important also with players. So that's was always the highest priority actually to treat players, which is the key in our world because they are representing the product, which is playing tennis. And so we said, okay, let's treat them maybe better at other events. Let's treat them preferred. Let's give them. That's what we still do. So in the beginning, I said instead of investing more money into specific names, let's treat all of them better, and hopefully it comes back. And that's still my belief that by treating everybody, respecting everybody, treating them up to employees, I mean everybody, respecting everybody, treating them as good as you can, it pays back. And this sounds simple and that it's very difficult, but it works. I can just encourage everybody. It's yeah. I think the way you treat others, they treat you. And so up to now, like last year again, and coming back to 23, I think there's a competing tournament in the same week. They also have good budgets, but most of the players choose to play Vienna. So I don't know, is that the consequence of this strategy, or is it just I don't. That's difficult to prove, but I believe in it again, and so this is definitely part of the concept.
And the ATP tennis tournament in Vienna has also been voted, I believe, several times by the players themselves as their favorite ATP 500 tennis tournament, which also speaks for itself for everything that you're doing. And when I was listening to you, one of the things that actually became apparent to me was the importance of networking. So what you just described, would you also call this maybe your recipe for success in networking, and how important do you see networking?
Yeah, I mean, it's networking is for me that there's some negativity also negative aspects in that term. Uh, it's more again, as I said before, it's about people and talking to people. So I would say communication is definitely key. So how you communicate, the number of people you communicate, and we always try to be positive. We always try to be motivating. So if you want to call that networking, fine. But I think it's yeah. The more people you get contact into, the higher the possibilities you meet the right people. And yes, again, if you want to call it networking, then networking is very important. I would not call it networking. I think because networking seems to have always the goal to achieve something. I think it's just yeah, again, meeting people, respecting them, talking to them, explaining them your vision, and that's also interesting. Now looking back, I can claim that actually if you have a vision and if you communicate that vision to many people and repeatedly communicate it, then it happens at some stage. So there seems to be some kind of automatism. If you believe in it, do it, then it happens. Yeah. So this is a learning I had, but obviously you can only tell it looking back. It's difficult to tell it looking into the future.
I remember actually another day that really defines your vision in a way. And that was back in the day when the tennis tournament in Vienna was still a 250 tournament. It was in 2014, and it was the day before the draw. So on a tournament on Saturday we draw, and on Friday is basically the last day where you can still name the wild cards, where you can still give out wild cards. And back then you were negotiating with two of the top players at the time, with Andy Murray and with David Ferrer. And you were basically you kept two wildcard spots open, and then you were negotiating back and forth, and basically last minute you signed both of them. And it was for an ATP 250 event, it was incredible. And those two players also performed incredible because they played the final against each other, and they were very excited about the whole experience there. Is that also maybe something that back then, as it was still a 250, that you're most proud of?
And it was definitely a milestone in the Vienna tournament. So this is exactly what you were just mentioning happened. And when I said before that you have to convince people or tell your vision or to many people, and I did exactly that, even with Andy Murray. And the vision was, of course, becoming a 500 at one stage, which seemed to be completely impossible. Because we were 13 tournaments or 11 tournaments, and all of them were successful. So this is exactly what I'm proving what I've said. So I told Andy, I told David, I told so, and then at the end of the day, we had a good tournament. They liked the tournament. They said, "Oh, listen, look, this is minimum a 500 level, and the quality you provide for the players, and blah blah blah." So and maybe Andy talks to somebody. So that's how everything, and it becomes some kind of a self dynamic process, and that's what I said before. You have to trust in and believe in it. Talk to many people. Again, call it networking or not, but I try to infect everybody with your positive vision, with your ideas, and then at some stage it happens. Maybe sometimes sooner, sometimes later. But this 2014 tournament definitely was a milestone, because the year after we got the 500. You can call it coincidence, or you can call it maybe the fulfillment or the implementation of that vision. I don't know, but it happened. So it was very good, of course. And from that moment on, it was a new dimension. I mean, being a 500 in that part of the year where almost everybody needs to play, wants to play, with a good environment, I think this was then probably easier to develop that tournament as it was as a 250 in the beginning.
Wow, and that's really incredible. And I remember that it was a very exciting time also to be part of that tournament. And so being a 500 tournament now, and really being an established, a well-established 500 tournament. And I know that you always had visions of you wanted to have Roger Federer again before his retirement. That didn't happen. You got Novak Djokovic. I know that Rafael Nadal is still on the list. 2024 would still be a possibility, but let's see how he's doing. But how do you? Let's stay for one more question with the Vienna tournament. Where do you see the vision for the future for this tournament?
Yeah, we are shifting from a tennis tournament, as I said before, to the entertainment product. I hate actually to call it product, but we have to make that comparison. So that's the route we want to go. We want to, everybody sitting at home with a whatever HD something high definition monitor or screen can see and follow a sports better than in a stadium. So that's no question. So what we now as organizers and promoters have to think about and do is to enhance that experience on site. So first of all, of course, it's being part of a sold out crowd is always interesting and nice, but also the level of experience and the entertainment we provide has to be raised. It's on top of tennis. Of course, tennis is the core and the key product, and that's the way we want to go. So enhance it with music, with live shows, with other things, with lights. So it needs to become more and more an entertainment product on site, because that's the only way to still attract people coming to the stadium. And I think we are in a good way, but there's a lot of potential to be done in the next years. But I'm very positive. So we get good feedback from all the people, and be surprised next year. We have an anniversary, and we have some very interesting projects already in the pipeline.
50 years, I believe, tennis tournament in the Stadthalle as an anniversary. So that's gonna be exciting. So another hat that you're wearing, besides the tournament director, besides the member of the board at the ATP, is that you're also an athlete manager, and not just in the world of tennis, but you're a manager, for example, of Thomas Muster, the former world number one, but you also, for example, the manager of ex-NHL star Thomas Vanek, and you had been in the past also the manager of Dominic Thiem. So, as an athlete manager, what is necessary in order to make an athlete successful? And for you, I think it's more about the business aspect in a way as well to create a personal brand around that athlete, isn't it?
Yeah, that's actually similar, as I said before, to employees or to the team. I think it's the personality which is the aspect an agent or a manager has an influence on. Of course, not on the performance on the court, which is there's a coach and fitness coach, and there's other people to look. I mean, still you have to choose the right people. So maybe that's also part of the agent and manager. But this aspect of personality and the same habits and the same abilities we're looking for with an employee. I think we also need to implement and convince actually the athletes we are managing, and this is for me is also a very basic but key element, that the personality changes a lot. So the way you play, the way you present yourself, of course, then the way how and which kind of brand you become through the years. This is and how marketable you are. It's in the end of the day very close connected with your personality. So there's a performance on the court in tennis, or in the pool in swimming, or on the slope in skiing, or on the ice in hockey, and there is a personality, and I think only a combination of both in the right height makes a very successful and attractive athlete. And this was always my purpose, and this was always my goal with all the athletes I have been managing, and I think most of the time it worked quite successfully.
Wow, that sounds beautiful. Do you have a concrete example about this? From can be from one of your athletes, or it can also be of something, maybe a personal brand story that you see out there in the sports world that really works very well.
No, it would be unfair actually if I pick some of the athletes I did. So I would keep it like it is. It's just changing the mentality sometimes, and in terms of being more outspoken, or you had, and these are, that's why I was not want to use an example, because the public should not realize actually what has changed in the behind the scenes to make that specific person as it was seen in the public. So I just there's it's a very difficult approach, because you need to identify first where the challenge is, how to change your personality, and I'm not talking about how you speak in an interview, how you do with the media. It's more about from the inside, the confidence and the way you present yourself. And so this was yeah, purposely influenced, and yeah, was most of the time again very successful.
And staying in the tennis world, actually, and when we think about public brand or personal brands, I mean the three biggest ones obviously is Roger, Rafa, and Novak, and that have all. And when you look at the fans' favorites in the last 2 decades, basically, it's been Roger Federer for many years. Now it has been Rafa Nadal, and I don't know about this year, but in general, why do you believe that those two are so? Besides, of course, their successes, but what makes them so beloved by the fans? And even though that now Novak has overtaken them in terms of the successes, but not on a fan loading.
Yeah, I think this is exactly proving what I just said. So it's not only the performance in your sport which drives your value and your brand value, and it's the person you are. It's the personality. It's everything around. It's these little small things between the lines. So it's and that's, I think, and even though all three of them are completely different personalities, all three of them have a big fan base, and obviously probably Roger has the biggest, but it's different people, and that what actually made that decade or even more than a decade so successful for them also off court and in terms of business and in terms of commercial partners, because they are so different. And um, yeah, I mean, talking about Roger and Rafa specifically, they're in the beginning actually didn't used to be close friends, but the way they developed completely different. The way they play was completely different. Their personality was completely different. The region they're coming from was different. So everything was different. But in every day, both of them become superstars and friends. By the way, so it's there's no one way of being successful, and there's different ways. And with Novak, it's he's defining his popularity. I think more about his performance. Which is also fine. And I think if he would not be that straightforward thinking on his performance and actually sometimes even ignoring everything around, he would probably would not have been so successful. Now you can debate maybe that he lost a little bit in the personality because of that, but it's a different way. It has to do a lot with your inner feelings and your personality again. So this is exactly proving what I said. So in the end of the day, the most successful athletes are those which have a very strong personality, in whatever extent.
Wow. Wow. Let's shift back again to the sports industry as a whole, because you already mentioned how it has developed over the last 20, 30 years. And also in terms of where we're heading, you said that we're going more into the entertainment product, as you said, but also where do you see the sports industry going in the next 10 years or maybe even above that? Also, maybe with
I,
influences that are coming from, let's say, from Saudi Arabia and so on.
yeah. I mean, it's. I think 10 years is impossible because the pace, everything is changing, is accelerating significantly. So, but the next 5 years, I think it's it might be a clash between legacy, values, money, and I hope that every organization is smart enough to make the right decision. So the thing what happened in golf is definitely a wrong, in my mind, a wrong approach. And I'm not judging Saudis or anybody else. I mean, there's a lot of entities out there with huge pockets full of money. But in the end of the day, the history and the legacy of a sport should not be changed too much, because there's a good reason why those, and again I call it product, even though I don't like the word, but this product becomes successful, and it is because of rules, it is because of the way the fans interact with the athletes, and so there's a lot of reasons why it becomes successful. And now thinking to maybe drive that success with money into different dimensions, I think is the wrong approach. So that everybody needs to be aware of. Of course, it's very appealing for athletes who trained a lot 20 years long to become successful, and 99% of them did not become successful. So for the small amount of very successful athletes, yes, it's appealing to become a lot of money. But also, I think in the most popular sports, there's a lot of money already in that business. So it's also a question of your personal attitude, how much money more you want to make, or can you be satisfied with the amount you're already earning. So these are questions I think the athletes have to discuss with themselves. But again, I there's a challenge with again money coming into a business, as it is everywhere, and in sports is the tipping point at the moment reached. But I think we in the big sports will make the right decisions. Hopefully, also including football, which I think about is creating a super league again. And it on the other side, and now coming a little bit from tennis and inside, it those external challenges create energy and create creativity inside the organization. So yes, a lot of things have not been ideal, and even talking about ATP, I think through those external challenges, actually we did a lot of improvements of our product with this profit sharing, for example, with the tennis players, equal prize money, men, women. So there's a lot of things which happen in tennis now. I think we are one of the leading sports actually in that diversity. So, and that happened probably because of outside threats. So that's why I think it's good to have some competition. And but in the end of the day, I hope that the sport, the legacy, will win. And as I said before, if something is successful, money anyway follows.
I agree. Herwig, just for you, and we were already mentioning a few times that you're wearing many different hats. How does a typical day in your life look like? And also, how do you stay organized? How do you organize yourself?
Yeah, there's two things. Wearing different hats is more like a um, psychological or mental challenge than a time or an organizing challenge. But in terms of time management and organizing myself, I think it was important. It was an important step to delegate and transfer a lot of abilities and a lot of duties and tasks to a very strong team, especially with the Vienna tournament. This is we have developed a great team over the past 5 to 10 years, and they do a great job. So that's why I actually involved in that event high level only anymore, and that gives me the opportunity to other things. And I mean, talking about what I'm doing most, it's still tennis. So if it's ATP or managing players and women as a male, female, or is it about running the events? Yes, it's all somehow connected. So it's not leaving one topic completely. So that makes it definitely easier. But there's also other things. Yeah, I'm doing it. And basically, it's more again, as I said before, mental challenge to jump from one topic within a second to the next one. But that hopefully keeps me young, and I go around with that.
What is one piece of advice that you would like to give to somebody who's just starting out on their journey?
Yeah, I think it's basic. It's a basic advice, which I said already before. Do what you like to do and enjoy what you're doing, and then everything comes automatically by itself. And sometimes earlier, sometimes later. But don't chase for financial goals, or don't chase for visions which are not your own. I think you have to have your own vision, and again you have to enjoy and like what you're doing, and then you don't think about 32 hours, 35 hours a week, or 40 hours a week working. It's not measuring time. It's measuring success, measuring performance, and again, if you like something, it's merging. There's also not this work-life balance, which is always used. I think it's one thing. It's your life, and if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not perceived to be work. It's part of your life, and then it's almost 100% the case that you're going to be successful.
Wow. If somebody got inspired, if somebody would like to find out more about you or also about the Vienna tournament, for example, where can they find you?
I mean, yeah, there's, as it is a very traditional on the website, so there's a lot of information on the website, also the links we're not hiding anything, so there's our email address, everything on there. So feel free to get in contact and ask questions. I'm more than interested to support young people on their way up and the career, and that's actually what I'm also doing a lot of times. I just can come from another meeting with a young athlete, so it makes fun. And getting older and older, you have a lot of experience. Some of the people ignore it, some of the people want to hear it. So happy to support young people or people on their way up.
That's very beautiful. Any last 30-second thought that you would like to leave us with?
Yeah, again, do what you like to do, and do it 100%. Be 100% committed. No excuses. No looking left, right. Focus on it, and then you become successful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your wisdom. Thank you for all the golden nuggets you shared with us. Once again, thank you, Herwig Straka.
Thanks, Ronny. Yeah, thanks, Ronny, for the interview.
Thank you for sticking with us until the end. To make this content even more valuable for you, please leave a comment below and share your thoughts, and also share this video with somebody you care about who absolutely needs to see this. Thank you very much. Have an outstanding day and see you next time.